I want to take you back to 1996. Microsoft was growing, money was flowing, and they were dot-coms popping up everywhere. I left Microsoft to make sure that teens of color had opportunities for these fields. So every week, 2 days a week for 8 months, students came to our labs. They learned to be network engineers, programmers, web developers. And dozens of companies stepped up to give those kids the practical experience they need through paid summer internships. And of course, we all know that those kids need to have degrees in order to further their career. But at the same time, the high schools were cutting back on counselors. So we were able to get volunteers to come in and work with the kids and their families to get them into college. Now, we were successful for 10 years. 100% of our kids went to college. Over half of them have graduated already. And we have doctors and we have scientists and computer scientists in our midst. But there was one thing that kept nagging me. Why is it that they kept showing up year after year academically unprepared? So we did a little bit of work, and we started looking into the education system. And one of the things that we found was there were very few opportunities to really get hands-on, to really build the kind of skills that they needed, unless you wanted to go to the regional skills center, which means you gave up your track to college. And then we started thinking, the research is showing that in order for kids to be successful, they need to really have an education. They need to be able to form their own learning and do their own thinking and work together and use tools to solve problems. But what we saw when we went into the classrooms were teachers standing in front of the class, much like I am here, just talking to people. And then the kids would memorize stuff, and then they'd take a test. And then they would move on to the next unit. And they were bored to tears. So some of the kids adjusted in a way where they were able to kind of form their own learning. And then you had a bunch of kids that just kind of went along as it was. And then we all know those kids that were trouble. They were trouble because they were bored. And that just doesn't set right with me, because what that says is that our kids are not entering schools where they're motivated. Our schools are not creating environments where kids can be successful. And for kids that have resources, they can overcome that. But there are a lot of kids that don't have those resources. And then they end up on the wrong side of the achievement gap. And I know I'm not happy with that, and I'm sure that you're not happy either. So I had an idea. What if we worked with the system instead of around the system? What if we worked together to create an academic environment where kids can learn? And, what if it's a STEM school? And they can get the kind of skills they need to be successful. So we started by building this framework where we got stakeholders together, and they invested into the school. And their return on investments were students that were well educated, giving back to their families, giving back to their communities. The next thing we did is we partnered with academic folks who actually knew what they were doing, so that they can help us with things like, how do you run a small school that has special ed students and ELL students? How do you make sure all of this works? And then we had to find a willing superintendent that had vision, that wanted to make a change but didn't have the resources or capacity to do it. We found that in Federal Way. In 2008, we opened our school, and then 2 years later, the state started cutting funding. Right around the time where we're trying to field computer science and engineering staff. So we pulled some of our companies and said, can you provide us with staff members that will come and design curriculum for us? And they did. And the end result is that we have a school where kids are in charge of their own learning, and they are very successful students. They are on the path to chart their career. And I want to point you to this graph here, because we did all of that for less than what it costs to run that high school internship program. We are running an entire school, and when that school is full, it will only cost us half the amount. Now, partnerships like this are very important, because they are the glue that is going to help our education system change. We have to trust each other, and we have to put kids first above all else. And I believe that schools can and should be about learning, but it's going to take every single one of us to make it happen. And I hope you will join me in this work. Thank you very much.